First Congregational Church in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. With me is Peter Sykes. Peter, you teach harpsichord and organ at Boston University, Juilliard, and now the University of Michigan.
I teach harpsichord at Juilliard.
Harpsichord, okay, Juilliard. So a lot of places all over the place, but today you're here to talk about this Roosevelt organ. This is the largest Roosevelt still playing. Is that correct?
It's the largest, more or less unaltered Roosevelt.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many ranks of pipes do we have here?
Yes, 71 ranks.
71. All right. Well, we have a lot to get through here, but you know this instrument. Where would you like to start in showing it off?
Well, first, I'd like to say that this organ many organs have one or two of everything. This organ has 5 of everything. And so there's every shade, every tint, every dynamic possibility that you could possibly want from pretty much all of the organ stop families. And so we'll start with the diapasons, and we'll go from just 8 foot from big to small.
Okay.
And so the first open diapason on the grate.
That's big. It's not overly tubby, but it's big and bold.
It's big and warm and clear.
Yeah, and it's right here in the front of the facade, so we're hearing it
absolutely
right in our faces. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the second open diapason. Perhaps closer to what we usually expected.
It's getting a little darker, a little farther away.
Yeah. And so then the open diapason in the swell. You can hear that one actually is more melodic.
Yeah.
It has less in the mid-range and more in the treble.
A little stringier, yeah.
Yes, and then the choir open diapason.
They're getting smaller and smaller.
They're getting smaller. So those are the 8 foot. Those are the 8 foot diapasons. And then if we build choruses on top of that, in the grate, we have the 8 foot. I'll start with the first open diapason. Octave 4. 2 foot. 2 2/3. Mixture. Sharf. Double open diapason.
Big clear chorus there. The mixtures are definitely a little more restrained than we might hear in later organs.
That's correct. This does not have what's called the inverted pyramid tonal scheme. It's the pyramid style.
But still, even up to the 2 foot, it's nice and bright and clear.
Absolutely. The mixture has had its tierce rank removed.
Oh,
and actually, all of the other mixtures in this organ contain tierces, including the sharf. So it's an interesting sort of thing. I guess that that's the regular mixture. Yeah, when I grew up, tierces and mixtures were like verboten.
Well, so they had their time.
They had their time, yeah.
All right.
And so then to just sort of contrast other possible things, open flutes. Mm-hmm. In the grate, we have a principal flute. In the choir, a concert flute. In the swell, a clarabella.
Yeah, all 3 different and interesting in their own ways.
Yes. And we're talking about stopped flutes. The stopped diapason in the swell is your average. choir, a roar flute. And then in the great, a Roosevelt specialty, the Doppelflöte.
Oh, yeah. Wow, big flute there.
It's a big
sound.
flute. Yep, yep. In a way, I think that it's like the ideal harmonic flute substitute for a non-cathedral acoustic, because it really soars above everything else. Then in the other spectrum, we have a quintadina in the choir. Which I imagine is sort of like a mixture stop. It's not something that you would use by itself. Then, in terms of strings, we have many possibles, again, many different qualities of both volume and, so viola da gamba the Great. Choir. Swell, solitional. There is a celeste to pair with it. Then we start to get soft. Here's a dulciana in the choir. And a dolce in the swell. That is with the swell open. Now I'm going to close it.
Quite the difference there. We should say the choir division is also expressive, so
Correct.
you can bring that dulciana down even.
That's quite right.
All right.
That's quite right. There are also strings in, well, I should say there are principals, flutes, and strings in the pedal as well.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, in this organ, the open diapason 16 in the pedal, it's your average, very strong, boomy sound. The Borden. A Lieblich Gedeck, which is borrowed from the swell. And a dulciana. Which has kind of a violone quality to it. And this may be the only organ in the world that has a dulciana in the facade.
Oh, yeah.
The big pipes on the side towers are the
Those
bottom
are
notes of the pedal dulciana.
I've actually seen that done before, so it's not the only one in the world. But it's an independent dulciana in the pedal.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
And so then it's just a matter of building choruses and realizing that each one has its own. Oh, no, color reeds. We have, yes, we have a very assertive clarinet in the choir. And a very big oboe in the swell.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, a vox in the choir with tremolo.
The Vox is in the choir.
The Vox is in the choir,
This is a
yes.
little unique.
That's true, that's true.
Usually you find them in the swell, but okay.
We have 3 chorus reeds in the swell, 16/8/4, contraffagato. Cornopian 8. Clarion 4. All 3. The trumpet in the great is not too big. It really blends with the flutes.
And a bit darker than the swell reed, so yeah.
Quite a bit, yes.
Imagine that helps blend it, yeah.
The 16-foot reed is called euphone, E-U-P-H-O-N-E, and it is a free reed.
Oh, okay.
It sits under the 8-foot.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that Roosevelt made free reeds, but we'll have to get in there and look at that and see how it works.
For sure, for sure.
Okay.
So if we build the great chorus, starting with the 8-foot, 4, 2, 2 2/3, mixture, sharp, trumpet, euphone, 16.
That's a great sound.
It is a great sound, especially when you realize that this is not a cathedral acoustic.
Well, yeah, and the organ fills the room really well, and it's not, despite the dry acoustic in here, it's not killing the sound of the organ. It actually fills the room without being overpowering. It's just a good sound for the room. So
Absolutely.
It's impressive.
So if we add this complete chorus, put the swell together with all of what constitutes the chorus there, including the cornet with the tierce in it. Together. The swell brings the drama.
Yeah, it just sits right on top of the grate and brings that extra brightness and fire. That's amazing.
Yep, yep. One interesting feature of this organ is that the great upperwork and reeds are all enclosed in the swell division. And so if you think it's, you can make the brilliance change by simply opening the swell. Here it is all the way open. Closed. And a crescendo.
Well, then I imagine if you have the swell and its reeds and mixtures drawn, that just even multiplies the effect.
Let's hear what that sounds like.
That's fascinating.
Makes it a super swell.
Yeah, it's almost like you had two swells going there because you can either use the swell or not and still have that level of expression to your great chorus.
That's really, yeah. Well, I mean, because a real crescendo is not only one of volume, but one of brightness.
True.
And so having the upper work
that.
is that's a very smart thing to do in a way. So that is, I mean, the swell, the choir also has strings at 4-foot pitch, which we can put on top of the quintadina and viol d'amour. It's a very, very bright sound. There are 4 4-foot stops in the swell. Octave 4, whole flute, flauto dolce, salicet. That can go on top of the to contrast with or
And all those 4s are independent.
Everything in this organ is
that's
independent.
That's a lot of amazing color you've got
Yes.
to play with in there.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So there's I mean, as I say, there's every shade, every tint, every dynamic qualities. And the point I want to make about an organ like this one, we live in an era now where organs are made to play repertoire. And that they're either played a romantic style organ or a Baroque style organ or a French style organ or all these different kinds. This organ was made to play music, just any kind of music. And my experience of it is that it will play anything you want. You play polyphonic music, you play Bach, you hear all of the inner voices with absolute clarity. It has enough color to play any of the romantic music. It has enough dynamic range to play Reger. Of course, this isn't a huge sound, but you get down to the soft stops, it can be so soft that dynamic range is actually very wide.
Oh, that's great. The console here is it's not the original console.
No.
This is an Austin, correct?
It's an Austin knockoff.
An Austin knockoff. So
There was a fellow named William W. Laws working in Beverly, Massachusetts, who made a career out of electrifying organs that maybe didn't need it, maybe did. This organ originally had tubular pneumatic action, and so by 1936 it might have needed something more, or something that worked.
There's a reason there's not many of those around.
Correct. I had a friend who used to call it tubercular rheumatic because they tend to wheeze and stop working. But Laws's, what he did was he never touched the organ above the toe boards.
Oh, really?
He left the pipes alone,
Okay.
Maybe because he didn't know what to do, I don't know. But in any case, all he did was the mechanical renovations.
So that's that's maybe one of the reasons this is still here playing, I guess.
That's correct. That's correct. So this organ represents, I mean, the parts that matter, the parts that you can hear, are untouched. And that is really the most important thing.
Well, there's one thing we haven't talked about, and I know it's a minor part of the organ, but it actually has a 4th manual and an echo division, which is back in the way recesses of the church somewhere.
That's correct. And that division had electric action.
Okay.
And so
originally it did.
Originally it did, in 1883. It was not the first electric action division in America, but one of the first. And of course, in those days, there was not electricity. It had to run off of batteries.
Right.
And it hardly works today. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stops, and only one of them sort of works.
Okay, the fern flute there.
Yes.
I'm told that one of the reasons it's so soft is the congregation thought it was too loud, or someone thought it was too loud, and it's been
There's
buried.
a panel in front of the opening that lets the sound into the church.
Even softer.
Yes.
All right, well.
Yes. I think of that as the division that you play during silent prayer.
Right. Just need a little something you can almost hear. There's a couple other just buttons and things here that I don't recognize. Most of the organ is very familiar here, but there's 3, the cash register style pistons.
Yes.
What do those do for us?
Well, it's interesting that there are 3 pistons here that are for the couplers alone.
Okay.
And those are where you'd expect the generals to start. But they don't. These are the first 3 generals. And of course, it has the Austin style where you hold it down and then put what you want. So it has 1, 2, 3 up here, and then 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, huh.
Generals, and then 3 divisionals for the for the echo rather, 9 for the swell,
Wow.
8 for the great, and 6 for the choir.
Huh.
Because obviously you'd need the most number of pistons for the swell.
Well, that makes sense, I suppose.
And reversibles, and then things that you can make everything go to the swell. You can. It has this very unusual or I think silly thing where there are these rocking tablets in which you can have the chimes on or off on all of the
Every
keyboards.
single manual. All right. Well,
I don't know why you'd want them on the great, but there you are.
somebody did. Okay. And there's also a thing called, it says crescendo check.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Is that just connected to the shoe?
It's just connected to the shoe and
So it's
tells
just
you.
supposed to tell
it's
you.
Like, it's like a beta version of the LED readout.
Okay, I've just never heard it called a check, so that's
Yeah,
all right. I
yeah.
get it. And then we have, do these work over here for the expression? They're supposed
Yes,
to show you
those
your,
are the Austin style,
Okay.
where they go up and down and tell you what the position of the shoe is.
Very nice. Okay.
A couple of things I didn't mention, that the trombone in the pedal is wood,
Okay.
that it has a 10 2/3, which is called resultant 32, which is really effective. If we have adding the 32. Really causes a rumble.
And what, the 10 2/3, what stop is it? Is it drawing another?
I think it's independent.
It's an independent 10 2/3. Okay, but it's soft.
It is
And
soft.
I think that's what makes it more effective. It's not in your face that it's
Well,
playing
also, if it's independent, it can be purely tuned.
tuned properly.
And so
you're
then
right.
it will really make the resultant effect.
Wonderful.
So this organ is worthy of all the care and attention it could possibly get. It's amazing that it works as well as it does, and we're really, really grateful that it is still here.
So I'm here with Matthew Bellocchio, works for Andover Organ Company. We're back here again now with this organ. Tell me about this instrument. Well, first of all, when was it built? We didn't mention the year.
This was built and dedicated in 1883. The church has a long and distinguished history, many distinguished ministers dating back to Puritan times. And in 1860s, they had a Johnson tracker organ, which was up front. In 1882, the church burned. All that was left standing were the outer walls. So they rebuilt the church, reutilizing the outer walls, and got a Roosevelt organ, which was donated by Timothy Hopkins, who was the adopted son of Mark Hopkins, who was one of the 3 principals of the Union Pacific Railroad in California, along with Leland Stanford. So there was a little bit of money there. The case was designed by George Ashdown Audsley.
Oh, really?
And it was built in the Roosevelt shop in Philadelphia, and it's basically cherry with some ebonized accents. It's really quite beautiful.
It's really unique. I've never quite seen an organ facade like this, especially a Roosevelt, so that makes sense.
And the facade pipes, rather than having a flat finish on them or gold leaf, I call it a gessoed finish. It's a rough finish. But this was in the 1880s. It was at the height of the aesthetic movement, where hand-hewn things and rough-appearing things were considered more aesthetically pleasing than smooth and perfect things.
It's really unique. When I first came in, I had to do a double take. Is that intentional? But yeah, it is. That's what they wanted, the pipes to have a rough surface on them.
Yeah, and they're very detailed. Yeah,
Now, is this the original stenciling?
that's the original
so it's
stenciling,
all
the
the-
original finish, as near
the
as we can
original colors.
determine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that's different was the console. Original Roosevelt console was originally attached to the case, and then a new panel was made. The original console shell was kept by the then minister, and he had it made into a desk with a cover. And then when he died, his widow donated it back to the church, so it's on display downstairs. But it's really an interesting instrument because Roosevelt was the most prestigious builder in New York at the time of the 1880s, and this is the largest surviving virtually unaltered Hilborne Roosevelt.
grate, the part of the grate that is unenclosed. As you heard previously, there's a portion of the grate above us that is enclosed with the swell, but this is the sort of the main part of it, and where all the big stuff is. And you can see above you the bottom of the ventile chests. You'll see several things actually. Yeah, these bottom boards, which are screwed on with springs. When you have a note that you need to access, you figure out where it is and then take that bottom board down, and it'll give you access to all the individual valves on the Roosevelt, which are screwed in, which are nice because some ventile chests later on, they took to gluing in the valve. So every time you had a failed valve, you had to take out the pneumatic with scrape it off with a chisel and then re-glue it on. These at least are screwed down. That was nice of him. You can see here the primary box right there. Originally this was tubular pneumatic, and the tubes, I presume, sort of came up here and were put into the chest at the front. When Laws came in, he designed a primary that would sit there underneath, eliminating the tubular pneumatic action and thereby electrifying it, which in fact is much more reliable. So in some ways, Laws did this organ a huge favor by changing the action from tubular to electro-pneumatic. At the Andover Organ Company in 2019, we did re-leather those on this division. So we're slowly making our way through the organ as funds become available. And then you see here, this primary box, also by Laws, controls the ventile action for the stops. So what you have is you have stop channels going this way in the chest and note channels going this way. Not too unlike a tracker organ, except this is all pneumatic, which was the idea. So when this primary fires, it fills that whole note channel with air, the stop channel, and then when you fire a note, it causes the exhausts the whole note channel, but only the stops where the stop channel is inflated is when the pneumatic will collapse and then air will go into the pipe above. Little complicated, very hard to troubleshoot, and when you have a leaky pneumatic, it takes a long time to get to it, so we spend a lot of our time here just sort of making it function rather than doing a whole lot of tuning. It's not too bad in shape, given its age, and hopefully someday they can get a more full restoration on this. So through this door is the choir division, so we take off the connecting bar for the swell shades. And as you can see, we have we have a little map here so that we know which stop we're looking at when you go to tune. In the choir, it's really pretty much the same. The only difference is it's really hard to get to the bottom boards. So when you have a problem in the swell, it's a lot more difficult to get to, and the boards are longer, so you have more screws to take out. It's quite fun. At several stages, Andover Organ has helped the congregation with volunteers to re-leather pneumatics, because there's hundreds of them in every division. So it's cheaper if they can do them. And they've had some success doing that, and then we reinstall them. We haven't done that in a while, but it was sort of a group effort at one point to get this organ functional, given the means of the parish. Yeah, this is a bell gamba. They're not too common. I mean, at Andover we see them because we work on a lot of organs from the American 19th century, and they did have bell gambas. This one's kind of interesting. Beautifully made. I believe it's all tin. Yep, get that green, slightly green-silver tint of tin. Of aged tin. It's controlled, the tuning, is done at the mouth with the ears. Yeah, the bell gamba is an interesting sound because, it's technically a string, but it's kind of fat down at the base to be a string, but then you would taper it to give it that tapered sound, and then you put a little bell on the end to then sort of amplify that sound again. So it's a very interesting stop. Yeah, so here's the pedal. There's on each side you have pedal. So one is the C side, one is the C sharp side. So here, the original organ for the work is they had gas lamps in the organs. I'm not sure how safe that is, but they had it worked out in those days. Here we are in the swell, which is all over here, and the enclosed grate over here on two different chests, all in the same box with swell shades in the front. It's shaped sort of like a pyramid because it fits under the roof of the church. So they were forced to use this configuration. We're really high up in the church in this location. It also lend itself to an A chest, so you have the chest itself is on C and C sharp sides. It is in need of much restoration, as you probably can tell. Over here we have the battery of swell reeds. We have that kind of loud oboe. We have a 4-foot cornopian and the 16. So here is the swell itself. It's rather large, as you probably can note. In the back we have a Borden, then we have the open diapason, we have a Spitz flute, we have a solitional and a celeste, we have an 8-foot clarabella, an 8-foot stop diapason, we have an octave, a saliset, a whole flute, and the 2-foot, and then a mixture. There are some missing pipes in that. And then, of course, here we have the enclosed grate. So it starts with a 5 1/3 quint. It's got a 2 2/3. It's got a super octave, a mixture, a scharf, and then we have the battery of reeds. We have the euphone, which is this free reed. I'll get one out here. Sometimes I can't get them open, but you may notice that there's a lot of pipes that are out and lying around, and that's because the cipher and getting to the valves is sometimes so difficult that in a pinch, the only thing you can do during a recital, it has ciphered during a recital, is you can just sort of pull the pipe and move on until you can get around to fixing it. And hopefully I can get this open, but I don't think this one will do it. But inside of it, there's sort of like I would call it the shallot, but it's not in the same way on a reed another reed you would recognize. And then there's a tongue that beats freely on the outside of it. And then you go up and down of this to tune it. So here, this sort of decrepit looking thing is the chest that Laws put in here to extend the ranks, because when he did the quote unquote new console, he put in some couplers that would couple at 4 that they may not have had before, so he extended some of the ranks in each division. So but since the chest is only so big, he had to add a little chest in here, an electric chest, pneumatic chest that would add those pipes. The new expression machines there replace an old pneumatic unit that had failed, and re-leathering that was going to be extremely expensive, and it wasn't original to the organ. It was put in later when Laws did over some things. So in this case, that would be a good example of putting something modern in an organ to solve a problem that wasn't historic anyway. So this is more reliable in the long run. So in 2014 and 2015, here in Great Barrington at this church, the AIO, the American Institute of Organ Builders, held a seminar on how to re-leather pneumatics for ventil chests. And we had a seminar here for 2 years running, and we managed to re-leather in that time all of the pneumatics in the pedals, both sides, and some in the enclosed grate where I was showing you before. So it's sort of like through those efforts and also through the efforts of the parishioners over the years who have volunteered to learn how to do re-leathering of pneumatics, this organ has slowly been brought back to better playing condition, although it would benefit from a complete restoration.
With Roosevelt, money was no object, beauty was. So this was a very famous organ for its day. But like many famous organs in churches, the organ was a munificent gift to a church of modest means. And what's happened now is the organ's needs exceed the means of the congregation. But we come every year, they have us come maybe a day or two, depending on their budget, to tune it up. It seems like half of our visit is doing repairs and fixing things, because it's not a simple mechanism. It's ventil chests, and if one pneumatic starts to leak, it can cause ciphers on other things. So it's half our time at each visit is spent troubleshooting and repairing, and then with what's left over, we do the tuning.
This is a situation, though, where not having a lot of money actually means the organ probably survived when it might have been thrown out for a more fashionable one, had they been able to afford it. So.
Yeah, it's the case where the churches of modest means keep what they have. It reminds me that a museum director once told me that when he's training younger people to look for historic furniture, he says if a rich person invites you to their home to show you their furniture to see if it's valuable, after you've looked at it and said nice things, very politely ask them if you can see the servants' quarters. He said because the servants' quarters is where they relegate the out-of-style furniture, and that's usually older and more valuable. So it's the churches in the out-of-the-way, less affluent communities that have some of the best organs.
Peter, thank you so much for showing me around this instrument. I can tell you love it and have a lot of respect for it, and it's great to hear. I'm really excited that it's here and playing, and you did a fantastic job of showing it off. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you like the great job Peter did, then please leave a comment down below. We love hearing from our viewers and hearing what you think about these instruments, these historic things that we get to come see. We can only come see these instruments because of our sponsors, so if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of the Organ Media Foundation, remember you can do that by going to organ.media and clicking on support. Until our next video is out, though, remember you can always find streaming classical organ music on our 3 stations, organlive.com, Positively Baroque, and The Organ Experience. Peter's recordings, I think, have been playing on our system since they first started 20 years ago, so thank you for all your recordings, and we'll link to some of his recordings. If you're interested in finding some of those, look down in the description. We'll have links down below. Thank you again, Peter. This is really fantastic. It's great to come see this instrument.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Brent Johnson. Thank you for watching.